have Dr. Tillman join us. I'm super excited to see her again. Hi.
Hey, Leilani, how are you? How is
I'm
everyone
doing
today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's so good to have you. I miss seeing you in person. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah. So we're going to have
Same
you
here.
share, and your topic is organizational practices of blended learning for educators.
Right, that
I
is
think I'm
exactly right.
sharing that screen right now. Do you want to take over the screen? I
I do. I
have a little
do.
slide here of you, but you could take it over now.
All right. Thank you so much. Please let me know, Leilani, if you're able to see.
Okay, I'm watching for you to take it over.
Okay. All right. Are you able to see anything at this point?
Don't see it yet, but I could have my wrong screen in front of it. So hold on. No, we don't see it yet. So let me stop sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sharing. So you should be sharing. I don't get it. Um,
All
yeah.
right.
Okay, now I see it.
Very good. Very good.
You're very photogenic. This photo
Thank
and the other
you.
one. Holy cow.
Thank you so much, Leilani. I love you. All right, so
Oh,
we're going to go ahead and get started. So today I'll be presenting, just like Leilani said, organizational practicalities for blended learning for our educators. Now, this topic does hit home to what Leilani just presented. We're talking about time and space. This is geared to kind of help with that time aspect. And so my belief is practicality and simplicity is the key. So this presentation is going to provide you with clear and meaningful instruction on how to be organized and how to win at hybrid and blended learning. So I'm going to give you just a little bit about myself. Let me see if I can lower this. A little bit about myself. I am assistant principal in Cumberland County right now. Definitely have many roles in my current role. I take on many different opportunities and responsibilities, and I'm so grateful for that. PhD in human services with a focus in social and community services, master's in education, CNI, and school administration. So as you can see, I have about 6 years total with that's my principal internship included with school executive experience. I have about 8 years or so with qualified mental health professional experience. So I am able to talk about the mental health side of our community as well. I served as case manager, social work aspects. So I do come with those gifts. They are gifts. Um, and also a 14-year span of public school teaching experience. And that includes working with special needs students. So my entire teaching career has been in all facets of special education. And I am an advocate for EC. Okay, so shout out to all my EC people. So before I actually get started into this, I just want to say thank you to Leilani, Christina, and Derek for allowing me this opportunity to present with you guys today and kind of give you some information and some tips that I help you along the way. Shout out to any of my North Carolinians, especially my Cumberland County schools who are represented today, and specifically Loyd Auman Elementary. If you are out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you, love you. All right, now I'll discuss my background for you, but I wanted to start with this quote. As we're talking about organizational techniques, a good system shortens the road to the goal. Okay. Orson Martin gave us that quote, and that's something to live by. If we want to kind of work on our time, we want to make sure we protect it and respect our time, we have to put different elements and strategies in place so that we can win at achieving our goal. Also, I've consolidated, excuse me, 5 tips. Now, I've taken these tips from research-based publications, anywhere from current issues and comparative education, educational practice and theory, of course, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, which of course I reside in North Carolina, and feedback from other colleagues in our state who has already started the hybrid or blended learning process in their counties. So combining all that information, I came up with 5 priority tips that I believe will help you win at blended learning. And as I go into the presentation, you'll be able to see how our county has developed and implemented strategies at the beginning of this 2020-2021 school year, and how we all opted kind of in different places, if you will, regardless of where you are or your county is doing. We know that we all going to touch that blended learning at some point in time. And so I'm actually in a county, in Cumberland County, who is actually planning to start that blended learning in March, in mid-March, okay, if not sooner. But based on the current COVID metrics and everything that we have, including our health data, is allowing us to go that route. And so to get my people on board and to help them succeed and start a process that will help them win, these tips are going to be vital. So as you can see, North Carolina's district data set. Now, this was given to us by Education North Carolina, and I did reference them at the bottom. This is how North Carolina started out at the beginning of this school year. So we're talking about the end of July, August. We have about 21 of our counties who chose to go into Plan B. Now, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. I'm not sure who's all, tuning in with us. You could be from different areas in the whole United States, on the other side of the world. But Plan A, let me go over Plan A. Plan A was designed for us to go back to school, return on a traditional basis, meaning that there's no provisions, no COVID measures in place, that we'll go back to school as we always have. Okay. Plan B was that was made to allow us to have that blended learning. Okay. That some in-person learning. And then Plan C. Plan C included full virtual, full remote learning. Okay. So now let's go back over this data. We have 21 counties who chose at the beginning of the school year to go Plan B, and that is some in-person learning, okay, 18%. We have some counties, about 31, chose Plan B and virtuals. Monetary means was given to our state, and so we were able to implement virtual academies. So our county has 2 brand new virtual academies. And now that totals 89 schools just in my district alone, in my county. So now we have Plan C, which at the beginning of the year, we had 36 counties. And Plan C with the virtual academy is 27. Now, my county actually falls within this range. So we make up about 23%. Now, if you look at that data, you can see the highest numbers, of course, is Plan C, Plan B, and Virtual Academy. So that tells us what? That tells us that there are some of our colleagues who have experienced the some in-person learning, and some of them have already tried it and were able to give some information and help us out who chose Plan C. All right. Let's see. So now we're going to go to tip number 1. So we talked about, well, let me kind of go back a little bit and address some things. Now, we, in our county, Cumberland County, attempted about 3 times to go into some in-person, that blended or hybrid model this year since the beginning of August. But unfortunately, with the COVID measures, we were unable to do so safely. But like I said before, this time in mid-March, we are planning to do so if nothing happens, and we continue to trend as we have. Okay, so tip number 1, let's go into these 5 tips. All right, practice your schedule. So educators, this is something that I have been telling my school, really honing in on. Practice. Dry run, that's something that we've always used decades ago when I was in school dancing. Dry run, equivalent to run through or dress rehearsal. Always practice. Okay, everything looks good in theory. All right, it sounds good on paper, but it doesn't actually end out the way we think it could. So definitely practice actually makes perfect. But practice your schedule, and that means, just like Leilani was saying earlier, sound system, equipment, technology needs, all those tech hookups, all those things need to be put into place. Educators, to save yourself some trouble, come in, practice what it looks like. Now, when we talk about the master schedule, the master schedule encompasses what everyone does in the school. So many different moving parts. So that means, what does recess look like? What does lunch look like? What does breakfast look like? Arrival and dismissal. Those things we need to look at, actually practice those things, how we're going to maneuver our kids to and from when we need to in our hallways. What does that look like? How can I practice those things with our kids? And you're talking about transitions as well. Mentioning transitions, we're talking about inside of our classrooms. What does it look like? Okay, how many minutes does it take? Think about these things when we're working with our kids who may be online with us and having some in-person students as well. That's a lot to juggle. What does that look like? Do I have enough screen? Do I have the monitors that I need? Do I have the earbuds? Anything. You need to practice what that looks like and actually do that dry run. Also, we're talking about daily classroom activities, all right? We're talking about your classroom space. What does that look like? How are we going to ensure that we're socially distancing in the classroom? What does it look like with our cleaning stations? Are we going to teach our kids how to make sure they're cleaning behind themselves properly and safely? Where are we placing the kids' belongings? Things like that. Those intricate details need to be discussed, and you need to, whether you do it individually or with your team, go over these things, okay? And then small groups, we're thinking about those stations and center activities going to look different in a hybrid setting, in a blended setting. So what do we do to make sure that we're doing those things in proper and order and safely, social distancing during those times? So again, practice, practice, practice. Number 2, we're talking about fine-tuning your time management. I can't say it enough. Protect your time, respect your time. It is a commodity that you cannot get back. So you must learn what it takes for your learning style in order to fine-tune your management time. Now, it looks different with everyone because we all come with a set of skills. And when we're talking about organizational management, we can range from anything from hoarders. You guys know what I'm talking about, hoarders, where it's an organized mess. I have experienced that as an educator. We keep things. If we started teaching in the 80s, we probably still have things from the 80s. Some things we need to purge. Well, I'll get to that at a later time. But we need to make sure that we manage our time. Organization looks different with everyone. We can go from hoarders all the way to Miss Maria Kondo, and she's someone who's been on Netflix, highly recognized for her organizational skills. If you haven't watched her, watch her. She's fun to look at. But we can range, our organizational skills range very differently. But with fine-tuning your time management, we're talking about planning. So in planning, let me give you a scenario. Now, when we plan with our instructional leadership team, there is a lot that we want to talk about. We want to get in there and talk about what we did in the weekends. We want to talk about downtime. But one thing that we have started practicing, and I am asking you to start practicing, is to ensure that you take care of the meat and potatoes first. Take care of business first, all right? The core of your objective for that, or whatever's on your planning agenda, whether you're planning solo or you're planning with your team, make sure that you stay focused. Try your best to stay focused, take care of the meat and potatoes. And then if you have that downtime, let's chit and chat. Let's talk about the weather or whatever it is you want to talk about. All right, but planning needs to be protected as well. Now, the use of instructional time, we're talking about your materials being ready. We're talking about your equipment being ready. All those things will save you headache. It'll save you from every negative emotion that you can even feel. And I'm talking about anything from stress to anger. And you know, when we get angry, we say those bad words in our head. They may not always come out. Sometimes they do. But we want to keep ourselves from going there negative wise and protect our time. So use of instructional time, simply talking about being prepared. Time is precious. So if you allotted time, 5 minutes for an appetizer, say you're doing a 45-minute lesson, okay? You have 5 minutes for an appetizer, 10 for the teacher input, 15 for whole group, and then you have another 10 for independent practice. And maybe you allotted 5 to 8 minutes for student feedback or your exit ticket. I know that in every scenario, in every lesson, sometimes it gets so good that it can keep going on and going on. But we're talking about fine-tuning your management, your time management. And that means sometimes we have to pull back. We have to rear back a little bit and stick to the time that we have allotted. There's more than this subject that we have to cover in this time frame. And being that we're going into blended, you may have, depending on your county's policy, you may have students who are tuning in for a set amount of time and then they're off the computer, okay? Or may have to log in for small group at a later time. And then you have your in-person students who are there with you until school ends, right? So you make sure that you watch your instructional time and make sure that you're adhering to it. Now, I do have a quick example about that. There was a teacher that I observed recently, and in her second grade class, she is such a fun-loving teacher. She is such a giving teacher, very beautiful spirit. And so her kids feel that, okay? She practices social emotional learning always in her class. And so her class is always inviting. Parents love her. Students can't get enough of her. But during that observation, I was able to see that they kept reaching, they kept asking questions in terms of student feedback. They kept asking questions. They wanted affirmations from her over and over and over again. And so maybe about 10 minutes into the observation, I can see that she was still feeding those students with those affirmations. And we love that. We love that. But you have to protect the time. So one of the suggestions that I gave her was to make sure that she does not allow student feedback to manipulate her time. Okay, unfortunately, we have to kind of cut them off. We want to hear what the babies say, but there is an alternative route to getting your student feedback, and that is through forms. It can be digital. We really highly want the digital forms, but it's different ways that we can get the feedback. Now we're talking about resources such as Flipgrid. We're talking about Padlet. You can create a Google form to get student feedback, and they can type away and give you all of that good information instead of manipulating your time. Okay. So when I talk about communication efforts, I'm talking about prioritize. Okay. And that means that with communication, we're talking about the emails, we're talking about parent communication. So when it comes to emails, one thing that I've asked our staff to do is to make sure that you designate a time to look at your emails. And that means you're looking at your emails before class starts, maybe during midday, in between sessions or resource class with your students, and definitely at the end of the day. But make it a point to prioritize your time in terms of email. Designate those times. There's so much information that's being filtered out and thrown at us each and every day that you don't have time to look at your emails constantly on a daily basis. Every day, every minute, you just don't. Time won't allow. You have to teach, right? So designate a time to do so. When it comes to parent communication, you know that sometimes our parents want quick feedback, prompt feedback, but you have to state that there's a time, designated time, that I will provide you with that feedback. And there's a way that we can do it to make sure that we relay that message in a positive way. But remember, if you don't take anything else from tip 2, in an effort to adopt a healthy balance, all right? Because that's one of I call it my sermons for the year is SEL, not just for students, but for teachers. But in order to adopt a healthy balance, you have to establish a cutoff time and stick to it. Everything is not an emergency, and so we do not treat it as such. All right, I had to adopt that philosophy, of course, myself this year, and I have my cutoff time because why? I have a family at home who also needs me, so I can't keep responding to emails all day and all night. Well, actually, all night I can't do that. I have to have a cutoff time, and I have to attend to other needs. So prioritize, people. Prioritize. Do not let your time be manipulated. So here we are with tip 3. Tip 3, establish routines. This does help with classroom management. Research has suggested many years ago that addressing SEL, social emotional learning strategies, helps student performance increase. Okay, now when we're talking about classroom management, social contracts. Social contracts is a concept that I learned from Capturing Kids' Hearts a number of years ago when I attended one of their conferences. And one of the best conferences I've ever attended. If you get a chance to attend a Capturing Kids conference, please do so. Highly recommend it. But one thing I learned and brought back to our school is social contracts. Social contracts allow for students to take accountability. They create the norms for the classroom. They all agree on it. They all create the consequences to follow if they don't adhere to those rules and policies that they put in place collectively. It allows them to be accountable for it because why? They help to create it. All right. So when we're looking at social contracts, that does help. And we have data to prove at our school that it does help with classroom management. Prior to COVID, we had that data and it's good. It was great data to share with you guys. We had a reduction of over, I wanted to say 32% of our discipline problems based on SEL implementation and social contracting. So now as I move on to affirmations and celebrations, it is vital. Everyone wants to be celebrated. Everyone wants to feel affirmed. So it needs to be a time established in your daily schedule to give your babies affirmations, to celebrate their accomplishments. Someone may have a scholar who normally doesn't turn in work. Maybe they turned in an assignment. It's all right to celebrate them. Give them those kudos. And especially at the elementary level where I am, it is you just don't know what type of feeling that you can provide to a student when they receive those affirmations, just like the example I gave you earlier with the second grade teacher affirming to her students every day, all day, and they just crave it and they want it and they want it. That is where you want to cut. It's going to help you cut down on classroom interruptions, disruptions, and definitely help you with managing that behavior piece. Celebrate your babies. It's okay. And with incentives. We want them, and they do too. So provide opportunities for your kids to receive tangible or digital, okay, kudos. And one thing that comes to mind is Class Dojo. Class Dojo is something that we use at our school. And they automatically, once you give the students a point, you can hear it. They can hear it online. And they love that. They want to see themselves receive those incentives. And then at maybe one thing that we implement in our PBIS is that ever so often after a quarter, we have a celebration. Those students who receive a certain amount of points from Class Dojo gets to receive participate in a classroom party or in a school party. Those type of things definitely will help you with your behaviors. And lastly, for tip 3, opportunities for student leadership. Students want to feel important. They want to feel like they have a voice. Establishing a student one of your higher functioning students when it comes to technology, maybe they can help with some minor tech issues that's going on in class. So just for instance, in the blended learning setting, you have your set of students online and you have them in person. So you can establish at least 2 students, one to help online, one to help in person. It's a way that it can be done to have opportunities for student leadership. And that's what we want to explore. Tip 4, we're talking about digital filing systems and storage. Now this, I didn't put them in a necessary order. I did not. All these tips are vital and critical and will help you. But digital filing system and storage is very important in a world of everything going digital. We're talking about worksheets. We're talking about apps. We're talking about different programs that will help and aid in your curriculum. Definitely, you got to have organization with that. So that would look like storage. When we're talking about storage, one thing that we use definitely, and it's free, Google Drive. Okay, Google Drive, create folders for everything. Your student data folders, your beginning of school folders, testing folders. You can create a number of folders. Okay, the storage is there. Create a system so that it'll be easy for you to pull when you need to pull. Now, proper labeling is critical. You have to label these things properly so it'll be easier for you to find. Also, utilizing digital presentations, worksheets, and forms. So I talked about it earlier where some of us who taught in the 80s and the 90s, we still have worksheets from way back then. Well, you can, after you purge, you can take that information and transcribe it into a digital format, okay? Some of this information is still valid and is still relevant. Whatever is not, it's okay. There is so much information out there now. Teachers who are working for teachers and supplying us with resources and tools to help us and help each other. There are things out there for you. I know that there's one person that actually 2 people that I follow closely on Twitter, and that's Matt. He's at the I Teach Tech. Look him up. He has Ditch the Sheets. He has that platform where he talks about transferring different worksheets into digital formats that the kids would love to engage in and that you can get the best bang for your buck, okay? Also, Slides Mania. She is one who works for free to help develop Google Google resources into everyday functionalities for teachers, strictly for teachers. So look those two people up, those two people on Twitter, look them up, and maybe you can find some goodies for you. So like I said, long past are the days of filing cabinets with a million worksheets. All of that is outdated. We have to trend with the times, okay? We have to transfer everything over to the digital format, okay? And I know you guys have heard this before, nothing new, but this is highly important in order to be successful. And tip, did I go past? Tip number 5. Yes, we're on tip number 5. So we come to the end of the tips. And depending on your county's policy and what it says for volunteers and extra people on campus, some of us can, some of us can't, some of us have stipulations, but seek assistance. Seek assistance. It is going to be a challenging job for those of us who have not participated in the blended learning yet. It can be overwhelming when we're thinking about it, but we can kind of challenge that and kind of ease our minds by seeking assistance. We can embrace volunteers. Just check with your county's policy about that. I know some of our builders, especially in Cumberland County, we kind of have to gauge about having non-essential people in our buildings, but there is a way to get volunteers to help you. Just look at, like I said, look at your county's policy and see where you are with that. But if you can embrace some volunteers, I suggest that you do so. Okay, not just in the classroom as well. I host a number of programs, and one of them here in Loyd is our mentoring program, and we have community members to come in and help us out. Now, coming in looks like they're going to be online, not necessarily in the building, but they're there to help with mentoring and different activities that we have with our Pearls of Virtue and our Men of Courage, our mentoring program. All right, number 2, using professionals in the building. This is one thing that our principal, Ms. Tara Bratcher, shout out if you're listening, came up with this idea about every adult in the building, every adult, our receptionist to our school social worker, everyone in the building will have a hand in helping with our remediation. So that does take some finessing, and that means we have to look at our schedules, we have to find time, but using professionals in the building, whatever time we have to give, that way we'll go into our regular ed classrooms and we'll facilitate and start helping with that blended learning model. Okay, so utilizing professionals in the building. Reach out to your colleague, maybe not on your team, maybe other than your teaching assistant, maybe someone who has a little downtime. Come in, help us out. Let's see what we can do in order to make this classroom, this lesson successful today. So reach out to your professionals in the building. Utilizing student leaders. I said it before. You have student leaders. You have help right there in your class. Every student learns on a different level, and everybody is on a different level some way, somehow. But there are students who would love to be utilized, who would love to help you out. That's you as a teacher assessing the strengths and weaknesses of your kids, okay, of your scholars. You know who can do what, right? Because you spent that time, you built that relationship, you find out what they're interested in, and so you can embrace them as a student leader. So find a way to do so, because you definitely can, and that's a great way to kind of help manage your classroom. Okay, so those are 5 essential tips that I wanted to go over and share with you for those of you in North Carolina or who may be tuning in who have not delved into the world of blended or hybrid learning. These, I believe, will help you. Okay, now points to consider. I'm not sure where I am on time right now because I am presenting and I'm not able to see, but these are some points to consider. Okay, you have to be flexible. Make room for the unknown. Okay, anything can happen. And as we have already
Dr. Tillman, we have a comment in chat. And,
okay, I can't see it. I'm looking at my presentation only.
Okay. From Lynn, here's what she said. Queesha, She said, what an excellent, wise presentation. Every item shown here makes a difference and are often skipped. Would make a good look for checklist for school administrators who want to see if any staff need support rather than leaving them to try on their own. And I also want to add to what Lynn said is like my favorite was number 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge problem in education, overly nested systems and people who don't pay attention to their filing. I mean, you don't even want to see my desktop. But it's like ridiculous because you're losing all your instruction time just dorking around trying to find your stuff.
Exactly.
So I loved that. Okay, so you want to wrap up so we can go to Jeff?
Yes, absolutely. So let me leave you with some points to consider. Make room for the unknown. It's going to happen. We're working in a digital age. Connectivity issues galore. Everything will happen that can happen will happen. So make room for the unknown. Also, it wouldn't hurt you to kind of take some technology, professional development. So if there's some free things out there, take advantage. And relationships. The better or the more relationships and the better rapport that you make with your kiddos, with your scholars, with your parents, with admin, with your colleagues, the better off you will be, okay? And lastly, but not least, good luck to those of you who are beginning that journey into blended learning. You've got this. You've got this. Reach out, okay? There's so many of us across the state, across the world who have done this and done this successfully. Reach out, okay? Each one, reach one, teach one. All right. That is all that I have for you today. I want you to follow me on Twitter. My handle is advocate_1. I'm on LinkedIn, and I think that's how the Learning Council found me is on LinkedIn, Queesha Tillman. And then I do have a blog under the WIC site. It's called School Leaders Roundtable. Take a look at some of the material that I've written that would help educators as well. Thank you all for allowing me to speak to you today. And remember, take care of yourself, practice self-care, and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the school year. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so very much. Awesome presentation. We're going to want your slides.
Young children spend 75% of their school day involved in listening activities and need to receive 90 to 100% of information via the spoken word to understand the full meaning. But there are numerous barriers standing in the way of that critical intelligibility, and unfortunately, they can't yet fill in the blanks when things are missed. In students' environments, distance, directionality, and ambient noise all play a role. Speech gets quieter over distance, dropping in volume significantly as it makes its way toward the back of the room. Further, when teachers face away from their students, the sound level can be cut in half. Distracting ambient noise can also drown out speech, leaving students and teachers straining to effectively communicate. And simply increasing the volume of speech itself is often not enough. As loudness increases and teachers try to reach the entire room, students might be able to hear what's being said, but they may still struggle to understand it. For example, clarity is critical to the understanding of soft consonants, such as p, t, k, s, and more. The recent COVID-19 pandemic has added additional challenges to the listening environment, such as greater distance between students and teachers, masks and other facial coverings, and protective barriers on desks. With instructional audio, you can overcome these challenges. By leveraging a microphone with either a portable or installed speaker solution, you can ensure the teacher's voice achieves even coverage, regardless of distance, directionality, and ambient noise. And with an easy tap-to-talk microphone, student voices are clearly heard by both their teachers and peers. Instructional audio provides a clear way to hear the human voice and a pathway to elevating the learning and understanding of students in the modern classroom. To learn more, contact Lightspeed today.